Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. My name is Sari Kamen. I am the Public Programs Director of MOFAD, the Museum of Food and Drink. And I am so honored to be able to welcome you tonight to Coastal Roots, tracing the ancestral history of cooking and farming in Georgia. Probably many of you have been with us throughout the month, even before that. This is February. It is our final week of February, so our final week of programs in our Black History Month series. And it has been so meaningful to be able to watch these conversations and welcome you. And I am so grateful for all of you who have been supporting us throughout this time. And even before, for those of you that don't know MOFAD, like I said, we're the Museum of Food and Drink. We're based in New York. And 1 year ago, we were just about to open our exhibition, African/American Making the Nation's Table. As so many of you know, we did not open due to the pandemic, which is of course why we're here tonight. And we're just really, really grateful to still be able to bring these programs to you. You know, Black Lives Matter, of course, and we feel like we could not wait any longer to share stories with you that are part of the exhibition, which hopefully, you know, will open maybe in the fall, depending on how it goes with the pandemic. That being said, it's been incredible to connect with so many of you coming in over Zoom from all over the country. Tonight we have incredible chefs, farmers with us. None are based in New York, so it's really truly a silver lining that we are still able to connect and find ways to be together virtually. So without further ado, I want our panelists to be able to introduce themselves to you. Let's start with Chef Mashama Bailey.
Hi, hi everyone. This is it's Zoom. I'm so excited to be here. MOFAD is amazing, and I'm so excited to see all the different exhibits. But I am Mashama Bailey. I am the chef and partner at the Great Restaurant in Savannah, Georgia, where I'm currently located. I recently became a published author. I co-wrote a book with my business partner, John O. Morisano, called Black, White, and the Gray. And so, I'm just out here working, and I'm happy to be on this panel.
Thank you, Chef Bailey, and congratulations on your book, of course. We also have Chef Adrienne Lipscombe, who's going to be our moderator this evening. Adrienne?
Hi, everybody. Hope all is well. Thank you again for MOFAD for hosting this event. It is truly an important topic and a unique topic to talk about tonight. I am Adrienne Lipscombe. I am in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I am the owner of Uptown Bakery, and I also am the founder of 40 Acres Project.
Thank you, Adrienne. And now I'm going to pass it over to chef and farmer Matthew Rayford, who is going to introduce himself and also introduce the film, which is based in his farm in Brunswick, Georgia. So he's going to tell you a little bit about that. And I'm going to go away. So have a wonderful evening. Enjoy these incredible panelists. And we will have time for Q&A at the end, which you can use the chat for. So take it away, Matthew.
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully everyone is doing well, regardless of where in the world you are. Hopefully you're staying warm. It's a nice, balmy 72 degrees here in Brunswick, Georgia. So I'm rubbing a little bit of that in, but it is beautiful here. My name again is Matthew Rayford. I am a 6th generation farmer located in Brunswick, Georgia. My children are actually the 7th generation to plant, harvest, and eat a crop from Gilliard Farms. And I'm also a chef. So yeah, I am totally excited to be here. Totally excited to talk about food on the 100-mile coast of Georgia. And these two amazing women that I'm on here with I'm just excited to be on the same panel with all of them. All that being said, there is a film about Gilliard Farms and giving a little backdrop and history of what we're doing here on the coast. So I look forward to, this will actually be only my 2nd time actually watching the whole thing. I've been really nervous about watching myself on film. So I look forward to seeing it. Land is power. Because it connects everything. People only go to work for three basic things: food, clothing, and shelter, all of which come off of land. If you have land, you have power. When you call somebody through the woods, you don't just be like, Matthew. You go, Matthew. Jupiter Gilliard, my great-great-great-grandfather, born 1812, a slave, was able to purchase 476 acres of land for $9 in taxes in 1874, and the land became his.
Gilliard Farms is located in coastal Georgia. At one point, our farm was underwater. The plants that we grow need compost, using things like fish and shrimp from the ocean to nourish. Agriculture is all about nourishing the land and allowing the land to nourish our bodies. Come on. Come on. Come on. Chickens are like tiny dinosaurs. They have talons, they have beaks, and they are often fearless. They'll fight, they like to have sex, and they like to protect their eggs and ensure that the next generation is coming along. It's so calming to hold a hen, to feel her soft clucking in her chest as she snuggles up next to you. And it could also be pretty scary to hold a hen when you know she's gotten injured or she has an egg stuck in her chute. You calming her and being able to fix that is going to make the difference on whether she's going to be able to survive or not.
Black food is American food. Most of the foods that we eat that we consider to be comfort food is also considered to be Black food.
I'm mighty proud of your son. If Grandpapa could see you now.
Woo, I tell you what, farming is hard work, Mama.
It is.
Patience. You have to have patience because you put it in the ground, the sun and the rain, and of course our Creator helps it to grow. And with our children, we have to be patient. We have to water them with all the good things in life, and love and kindness and patience, and teaching them to love people.
This was a big ass oak tree when my Nana was a baby. When my Nana talks about this tree, she'd be like, baby, this is a big ass oak tree when I was a baby. Pine trees grow better when there's been a burn underneath them. So you can actually burn part of your pasture, and then when it comes back alive. I feel very humbled to be able to walk into the old schoolhouse and touch a wood beam that was cut to be built into the schoolhouse to educate young Black minds.
Thank you, hibiscus, for allowing us to harvest your fruit today. Thank you for growing big and beautiful. And thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Ashe.
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 Thinking about the enslaved cooks who fed the plantation families. Thinking about the enslaved cooks who fed our founding fathers. You cannot deny that African cuisine is American cuisine. We make the use out of every part of the hibiscus plant, from the young leaves that we cut up and include in some of our salads, to the beautiful flowers that we turn into flower essences. For us, the hibiscus plant is so bountiful in the different ways in which we can incorporate that into the fun of the plate and the fun of entertaining guests.
So I'm not doing anything new. This is really the old ways. This is how people farmed. This is how people survived on the coast. You understood that A, you didn't fight Mother Nature, and B, you built everything to work. I feel like two old people. Sitting in
Speak for
rocking
yourself.
chairs. Oh, I didn't say I was old. I was just saying
okay.
it feels like we're
That's
two
what
old
it feels
people
like.
sitting here in rocking chairs. But,
Mm.
you know, I can just imagine Nana and great grandmama and Florine and sitting up underneath this Spanish moss, this big ass oak tree.
Mm. Mm. Watching the sun go down.
Watching the sun go down. We're living a good life now. It's tough, but it's good.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matthew, for taking us on a trip on your farm. I think that was a great way, a great introduction into tonight. I think, Matthew, you may be on mute.
Boom, I am. Thank you.
First of all, I'm wearing my red glasses because of you, because that's, you know, we got to represent.
Hashtag red glasses.
Hashtag red glasses. Well, like, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you for allowing us a peek, you know, just a peek onto your farm. It's pretty big. There's a lot of acreage on that. I wanted to start out because ironically, when I was asked to do this, I was also reading a Bulletin Bureau of Labor from 1901 by W.E.B. Du Bois and PhD, and it's called The Negro Landholder of Georgia. And I just want to read a little excerpt in it. And in fact, it's the first 2 or 3 sentences, because I was still feeling like a slap in the face, like we're still doing this and we're still asking the same questions. So it starts out that one of the greatest problems of emancipation in the United States was the relation of the freedman to the land. Millions of laborers trained principally to be able to do in farm life were suddenly free. Millions of laborers trained, if they were not landless, homeless, and without money or tools, starvation or practical re-enslavement awaited them. If they were to be given land, who was to pay? In this discussion that arose on the eve of the proclamation of 1863, there was a general agreement that in some way land must be furnished to freed men. This demand became more and more imperative as the Northern armies penetrated the South. Thousands of Negroes dropped their work and followed the Northern armies in droves until the problem of their subsistence and ultimately disposal became pressing and puzzling, especially as a case of Georgia after Sherman's March, which the Sherman March ended up being with the 40 acres, coming of the 40 acres. So in even the first sentence or so, who was to pay, where was land going to come from, and what was happening to these slaves that were being freed, what were owed, is so significant even today in 2021. It's still significant for those generations that have come through. And as you related in the film, it was your great-great-grandfather?
Great.
Okay, great. Woo, Lord. Great-great-great-grandfather purchased, yeah, Mashama's counting too, purchased the land for land tax, correct, for $9.
$9, right.
Which is, would be fabulous now, but in today's time, there'll be a couple of zeros on the end of that.
Absolutely, for 476 for sure.
So I really would like to talk about just a general, we'll generalize a lot of things, but I really want to talk about farming in Georgia and farming on the coast. And it's a lot different. I don't think some people don't realize it's a little bit different than farming inland.
Right. Yeah, it's wait, was there a question that I didn't hear?
No.
I just want to make.
You're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is we're definitely on what's called a silty sandy loam. So very quick drainage, like water hits the ground and it'll puddle up and then swoop, it's gone right into the aquifers. So we have that. We also have what I would consider brutal summers. So when I say brutal, I mean like my running joke is that in April, what everybody considers to be summertime everywhere else, we're already getting in April. By June and July, we're in the 100-degree mark. So let's put it in a much larger perspective. When I went to UC Santa Cruz in 2010, 2011, it was April. And we were talking about when we were going to plant tomatoes. And I was like, oh, tomatoes should already be planted where I'm from, right? Because the temperature is so much different here. We are considered to be, where Mashama is, she's right on the edge of 8B, zone 8B planting, and zone 9A, which is the exact same heat index as North Florida and Louisiana. Lower Mississippi and lower Alabama, like all of that. So we got real heat here. So plus there's all SIMs, mosquitoes, and everything else that happens to be in your face when you're trying to plant and everything else. So yeah, I mean, that alone makes it really hard, especially when you're talking about trying to keep nutrients in the soil. And so soil is a living organism that you have to feed properly so that it does what it needs to do. But what's different about the coast is literally where Mashama and I are located is as close to the ocean as you could possibly be. Like the restaurant I'm in the process of opening, Sweet Georgia Juke Joint, is literally it's from the sand dunes. So if you come in probably another 20, 30 miles, it's still sand, and sandy loam. So a lot of, and very acidic soil. So understanding like those kinds of things also helps you plant and also helps you think about what you're going to do. And so one of the reasons that Georgia is considered to be the blueberry state is because of our acidic soil that we have here. And so, because we can plant blueberries like no other. So I think like seeing that, knowing that it's so hot here, I mean, it's funny because I hear people that call me and be like, oh, what you got in the ground in like late June and July? I'm like, nothing. I ain't going outside. You know what I'm saying? It's 102 degrees out. What I'm gonna go outside? I just, you know, I heard when I got ready to move home, people be like, you going back home for that slave work? And I'm like, nah, I ain't getting ready to work in no sun like that. Like, I'll go in the kitchen. If I want to be hot, I'll be inside the kitchen. But for me to be outside in the sun, that ain't happening. So July and August, I plant sun hemp and I let that cover crop grow. And then I go back into the ground in September. I mean, but I'll have collard greens in like late October, early November.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially for for me, it's like a balmy 37 degrees right now. So today, it was shorts weather, so it was out on the barbecue and kind of what's happening out there.
I got you.
But I am from Texas, so I definitely understand what you're talking about.
Definitely.
I definitely understand the humidity. And, and I think what the interesting fact is, and I think a lot of people, if they don't have a general understanding about Black farmers, like a majority of them are in the South. And in fact, Georgia is the 5th largest state for Black farming or Black producers. It's about almost 2,870 farmers in 2017, though that number probably has dwindled down over just the time that we are losing Black farmers at this moment. And, in comparison to like Texas, which was 11,000. So even though that number may seem a little bit big when you look at the number of Texas, it's really not that large, right? 2,000, almost 3,000 farmers. And Mashama, I do want to bring you in because, y'all are using producers and Black farming producers in the South. How is it to work with them? First of all, are there many around that are working with restaurants?
No, that's a good question because no, they're not. They're not because I don't think they have the accessibility to come into town. There's a few farmers that I work with in Georgia and Black farmers that I work with in Georgia and in South Carolina. And they come in once a week. And sometimes that week has to be pushed to the next week. So I think transportation is really one of the hardest things to get some consistency with and labor, trying to figure that out. But yeah, I worked with more. So I probably work with 3 Black farmers at the moment, and 2 of them are proteins. Okay. So one's an oyster farmer and the other one is a pig farmer. And so for produce, I work with a farmer out of South Carolina because she has the transportation to come back and forth. And if you're out there listening, Black farmers in Georgia, on the coast of Georgia, hit me up. I will definitely take whatever you have, just, hit me up.
I think it's very interesting because I think there's a culture, a dialect that a lot of people don't understand because you said oyster farmer, and people don't relate that, there are farms or oyster farms that are banked in on the coastline. And, unless you are from this area or from that area, from the coastline, that that there are those types of farmers, which I probably figure out those are just as unique, those Black farmers being unique on the coastal line that are doing any type of coastal farming. And I believe, a lot of that is passed down by generations, right? This is taught by generations. And something in Matthew's film kind of stuck out to me as they were clipping the hibiscus is that they were saying a blessing. They were saying a blessing to the land. And I think that's a lot to do with especially Black culture about giving thanks to this land, because he identified it. He's like, you have power, you have identity, and you're being thankful for this piece of land. Is that about right, Matthew and Mayana?
Yeah, very much so. You know, it's kind of funny because my family is very, very spiritual in a lot of different ways. I mean, from African ancestry to building 2 churches on Galilee Road. You know, my nana got into a conversation with my great grandmother, and she was like, "Well, I'm gonna go build me a church," and she literally went 200 yards away and built another church. So it's 2 churches on Galilee Road, and both of them my family started back in the day. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, my family's always been very, very spiritual. It's really interesting because, like, I have right here some Sea Island red peas. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I remember my grandmother, my nana, always doing was like, when she gave away stuff, she'd be like, "Yeah, baby, I did a little prayer over it, so you know you should get a good crop," you know, that kind of thing. So I think that's a big part of what we do, and you know, it's also about using everything, right? So I really believe in the concept of George Washington Carver, where everything gets recycled, everything continuously gets done over and over until there's no more of that product. Mm-hmm. So I was just walking the farm today and I was looking at this big pile of boards and posts that I have. And I was like, what was I using that for? And I was like, oh, that's right. I took down this thing that I had built like 4 or 5 years ago because I didn't like it. And I was like, I'm not going to throw all the wood away, you know, so it's good wood, right? So it's one of those kinds of things where you use what you use what you got to get what you want, you know?
So, you know, what's interesting is like my great grandfather built a church too, right? You know, he built a church too, but also land was very important, and especially in passing it down from generation to generation. And so when he passed, you know, in his 90s, and his kids are in their 60s, he had land for each individual child, you know, to say that's that period, right? And then right. You were in a unique situation because not only you are a farmer, you are a chef, right? And so you talked about making sure you use everything, you know, as a chef, you start knowing and figuring out techniques, and, you know, and Javon is a herbalist. So you're using, you know, you're using the ingredients, they're drying, you're doing fermenting, you're going through the process of dyeing. You are really recycling, you know, this ingredient till it hits the ground again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's one of the interesting things that the question that you asked Mashama about where Black farmers are with like, you know, working with chefs. I mean, that's always been one of my big things. Like in every city I ever worked in was like, you know, where are they? You know, what's going on? And I would meet some, but none of them were connected to restaurants. And I also understand that sometimes, depending on who the chef is or who the organization is, sometimes it has to do with invoicing. Sometimes it has to do with the understanding of like, there are a lot of chefs that I know that would very easily like to gravitate to farm to table. But the thought process is, you know, if the weather goes bad, the thing that you put on your menu has to change. And there are a lot of chefs that can't like just like fire off like, wait, there's no okra? Like okra is on 8 things in my menu. And you're like, nah, it's, you know, the locust took it, or, you know, a hurricane or something, right? So then it's like, okay, you got 12 items that have okra in it. First of all, I would never do that, but like those things, right? And so then they can't pickle the okra, they can't roast the okra, they can't put the okra in the gumbo. And so one of the things that I have watched Mashama do over the years is just like take these small pieces and just elevate them to this next level, because she understands the food and the seasonality of food. Right. And I think that a lot of not all chefs, but a lot of chefs have gotten used to the big boxes like US Foods and Cisco's and all them, and nothing against that. Okay, so nothing against that, because we all have to use certain things that we need all the time, right? But what I'm saying is like, if you're gonna depend on a farmer for your product, carrots might not be in season, but you want carrots. So where do you get the carrots from? So it's also like working with, and I think that that's one of those big conversations that, and I'm gonna just be honest with you, the Black farmers I know, they would never put up with a chef hollering back at them. They just won't. They like,
Right.
you know, blank, blank, blank. I've been doing this for how many years? You just started cooking. Like, I've been growing this for 35 years. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just telling you, it ain't come up this year, or you only got 100 pounds of it this year. You don't have 200 pounds. And so I think there's also that. And then there's also the stereotype of what the Black farmer would be like if he came in the door, right? Because I know some, and it's interesting you said proteins. I know some ranchers, Black ranchers that are Black Angus cows that are like smartest. I mean, they just super dope smart. You know what I'm saying? Like, the ranch is set up, they're building their own slaughterhouses and all that kind of stuff. And like, you can't just talk to that guy like he just does cows, right? And you shouldn't talk to anybody like that. I think the respect piece has also been one of those things that I've heard farmers not, Black farmers not wanting to have to deal with that. So they're like, I sell my stuff where I sell it, because
Yeah.
I believe in truck farming. I believe in pulling up on the side of the road with, 100 pounds of collard greens and, a full trailer of watermelon and, all that kind of, all your crookneck squash and peanuts and everything, and just sell it off the back of the truck. That's what I was raised seeing in the 70s and 80s. Like, you can't even tell me about no farmer's market.
Sure enough, because that's how I knew. My family stopped on the side of the road. And then, in fact, you would even know the farmer, or, that's the good one. We're going to have to stop there, do U-turn, turn right back around. We're going to right there, get as much as we can. But you bring up some really good, interesting points, especially with the perception of what chefs and restaurants think Black farmers are and what they do. And I think the underlying thing that is missed is, one, they are business people and entrepreneurs, and they've been doing this for a very long time and been struggling for a very long time from the beginning. So, disrespecting a Black farmer, that farmer is easily able to walk away because they know their product is good and they will be able to sell it elsewhere. I think one of the interesting things, especially going to Mashama and working with farmers, and Matthew, you brought it up, is the seasonality, but the pros and cons of working with farmers, period, right? Like, you brought up, like, a natural disaster can happen and you have to be able to pivot on a dime, right, Mashama? If something you were expecting to come in doesn't come in, and you hinted to that, like, you didn't get the product this week, but you're going to get it next week.
Yeah, if it's high tide, if I need oysters right away and there's a storm and it's high tide, then I can't get oysters, right? If they're, if these things are affected by the weather, or sometimes you literally use all of the carrots in that crop. Right. So you put your order in for 20 pounds of carrots and you get 5, right? So it's like, okay, we don't have any more carrots, and the carrots we have, I don't want to sell because, they're not as nice as the other ones. And so you have to be able to pivot if you're going to use farmers, period. You have to have a couple of things in your arsenal to pull out and change. Like, for example, one of our fishermen, they don't have any fish, and they have shrimp and they have clams, and they can't come this week. So we're doing tasting menus, and we started doing tasting menus post-pandemic because I didn't want to waste any food, and I didn't want to waste anyone's time. And so in my mind, tasting menus, you have X amount of ingredients and you use the bounty of those ingredients, and then you sell said ingredients in a dish, and that's it. And you move along. When those things run out, you move along. We opened in September, we got succotash on the menu. Now we're using dried beans and turnips, right? So you start to move through that stuff. And I think it's important to just build the relationship and the conversation with the people that you want to work with. I thought Matthew brought up something interesting when he talked about invoices. And those are small things. Like, there is this pecan forager in Savannah, And he goes in this historic community, and it's mainly an elderly Black community, and he collects all the pecans. He's formed a co-op, so he sells them at the farmer's market. He shells them, he'll candy them in different flavors and stuff like that. And then we buy them. And the first time he brought me 30 pounds of pecans, I was like, okay, thank you. And he goes, well, if you don't pay me, then I can't leave the pecans. And I said, well, I need an invoice in order to pay you. So it was definitely like this miscommunication of like, oh, I bring you the pecans, you give me money. But I'm like, yeah, but I have to account for the pecans, so I need a bill. So we had to figure it out. But I think it is breaking into a different realm and figuring out the language that you need to use and paying and respecting both parties, the person who's buying the food, also the person who's growing and bringing you the food. Really, that's the person you need to respect.
Right.
And so, it is interesting working with all farmers, especially in this area, Matthew, because a lot of these farms that's selling them to restaurants are young. They are 5 years old, 6 years old. So those historical farms, you got to go to them. You got to get in the car and you have to go to them. And that's who you want to go to, because they're the people who understand the seasons and understand why they shouldn't plant a big crop of this year because the soil isn't right.
Right.
Or, there's going to be a bad hurricane season or whatever,
Yeah, what's really interesting is I have been able to, a lot of farmers farm according to an almanac, right? They look at the almanac, they look at the farmer's almanac and they go, okay, this is what should be happening, blah, blah, blah. So I'm very, very fortunate that my grandparents and great-grandparents wrote letters to each other. And so my Nana lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut, while my great-grandmother was here on the farm. And so they wrote these letters about what they were either planting or what they were harvesting and taking to market. So because of that, I've been able to kind of like tweak back, okay, they were taking greens on this day, so let me go back, greens take 80, but okay, let me plant this now, and I'll have the greens about the same time, right? But then I also started to understand that within those letters, the larger thing that was also going on is them talking about food culture, right? And where like this food came from and like how it moved and, oh, mama, I would love to plant some collards up here, but the weather just not right. Like knowing that growing collards up north is going to be a different time period than them growing down here. So like knowing those kinds of things is like an amazing thing. And Mashama, you brought up a really good point that, especially when we talk about older Black farmers, they're like going to it's not that they're not trying to be cool and hip and all the other kind of stuff. It's just like, I ain't got no time for that.
Yeah.
Like, like I take my stuff to the market or I just pull my stuff up right here. If they want it, they can come to me because I know I got the best or whatever.
It's funny that you bring that up, Matthew, because I wasn't with Adrian, but I was in St. Helena. And we went to Barefoot Farms in St. Helena. And I was like, you gotta come to Savannah. You gotta come to the farmer's market in Savannah, 90 miles away or whatever, an hour away. He's like, why? People going in and out. We're talking in between the two of us, people walking in the farm, buying food, going out the farm, walking in the farm. And I'm trying to convince him to come to Savannah to sell me some watermelons or whatever he was selling.
Right. Yeah.
Like, no, I got a good thing coming. So it's like that side of the road thing that, we go where the food is.
Yeah. And I think it's also, Adrian, it's really interesting because looking at truck farms, right? And looking at the fact that we weren't allowed also in certain markets, So we had to figure out a way to sell what we had. So that's how the truck thing happened in the first place. You know, to now have people not being able to do the truck thing because they don't have the right permit or business license or whatever.
Right.
It's crazy talk. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's also part of a cultural piece that we have to respect also. You know, like my mom is super funny because she's up in Shelman Bluff, up in the Darien area. So she's right between Mashama and I, right? She's right between it. And my mom literally is, I would say 60 to 70% of her vegetables off the back of a truck.
And I think that's interesting, Matthew, because it has its own economy, right?
Yeah.
You know, farmers are busy, right? They're up early in the morning. They're taking care of, if they got to harvest, they know what day they have to harvest, where they have to be, where they have to go. They know their market. They know their customers. The customers know where they're going to be, you know, and then when you're disrupting that, saying, can you bring me this to my, you know, to my restaurant?
Right.
They're not thinking that way, right? Because that's not their form, and that's not the culture of how they're doing their farming, and that's not the distribution, right? Because we're talking about distribution, so it's not the distribution way of how Black farmers are doing it. But it's also been for, like you said, survival, right? They had to build, bring it to the side of the road. If they had a vehicle, bring it there to the side of the road. Black farmers markets started, and then, you know, after a while, they kind of just disappeared, you know, because of the lack of farming and other antics that were a part of it. But when you see, like, when I see a farmer, no matter their color, and they come to my restaurant, I literally stop everything I'm doing, right? Because they have taken the time to come up. You know, they're like my superstars. They come, you know, I'm like, get out the way. We got, you know, because they took the time to come up to the restaurant, and, you know, and I have to respect that, you know, for the amount of work they're doing to be able to come and stop, and they are selling their product, and they're willing to find and open a market up. And I think, you know, as we're talking about chefs need to branch out a little bit, right? And we need to open up and understand that U.S. Food, the Reinhardt's, Cisco's are not the only ones out there, and that food comes from a farm, right? So it starts at a farm, no matter if it's a corporation type farm or if it's a small farm or a medium-sized farm. So, but to be able to know where your food comes from, to understand who the person is that touched this, and I find, and I was interviewed about this, one of the best things sometimes is, like, it just got harvested like an hour or two, you know, you know, and this this food is alive. You know, I'm not going to open a box and be like, Lord, this is a mystery. Let's see if I got
definitely.
Did I get what I prayed for, and open it up, you know, and that it's there. It's not coming in a box, it's in a crate. The farmers sometimes bring it. We can taste it together. We can talk about the growth. You can talk about the progression of how it got to you. And I think we need to express that a little bit more with our customers.
Definitely.
Mashama, how are you able to express that, you know, especially when we talk about, you know, we don't have oysters today, or we only have so many amount of carrots, or we're sold out, you know, like the biggest one is like we ended up selling out, right? Because I've been to your place and there was some sold out, and I was really mad and I really wanted it.
We try not to sell anything out. We really do, but sometimes it's real good and everybody wants it.
Everybody wants it, yes.
You know, I just, what was the question again?
Well, how do you relate to the customer? Like, you know, the relationship of, you know, farm to table, because, you know, and especially when it's seasonal and they're wanting okra, and, you know, and then okra's not in season, you don't have it, or you sell out.
Yeah, we sell it we supply the servers with that information just like that, right? We lead with the fact that we are buying locally. you know, and locally is not this abundant sort of, you know, vast net that we can cast and get whatever we want out of that net. It's going to come up with certain things. And we explain why we use those things. We explain who we're buying them from. We talk about the farmers we buy things from. We talk about all the people we get stuff from. And even when it's from, sometimes it's not from directly from a farmer, right? And we talk about that too, you know? And so I think the best thing for us to do is just to lead in that conversation and talk about the food. And there's a lot of people that don't get it, you know, they don't understand why this Hoppin' John is so expensive. And it's like, well, the rice is $4 and the beans are $8 a pound. And so it's like, you know, that's how much it costs. And there were people who harvest these ingredients, and they need to be paid.
Right. Yeah, you know, there's
for their time.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Michelle. A lot of times people don't understand how much the farm that is getting something from out of the trucks, right? How much they're actually making compared to like that's very local, that's got his hands in the dirt, you know, right here. You know what I'm saying? And one of the very interesting things, Age, that I'm gonna bring up is in 2012, there was a survey done about eating in Georgia. And one of the things that was brought up was that if each household in the state spent $10, just $10, on food that was produced in this state, we pushed $21 million back into the economy.
That's a smart.
So eating local makes sense, right? Because the money is flowing within your community, not going way away to some other place, right? And so that's also one of the things that I always have noticed, that is in the Black farming community I know about. It's a lot about trying to keep that money flowing within, you know, the folks that we know. I just had a farmer just asked me a little while ago, he was like, hey, when you clear off that 30 acres, you thinking about start planting hay? And I was like, hey? He was like, yeah, alfalfa, man. He was like, you know, we paying, you know, $200 for a big roll or whatever it was he was telling me. He was like, man, I'd love to just come right here and just get some hay from you. But then if I drive around, if I drive in a 5-mile radius of our farm, there's 20 plus cattle folk in this area, just within 5 miles of where I live. You know, most people don't even know what food is around them. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's also some of that. And it's also a big difference when you live in a very large city like in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? But when you live in something that's not that big, are not that far. So, you know, I think that that's one piece. And then, Mashama, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. There's actually a co-op that's being created right now of 5 Black shrimpers that are getting together because they have this, they've been shrimping, they've been doing all this for all these years, and they're trying to figure out, like, where do we go and take all of our shrimp, because they know that just taking it to the local markets is not going to be good enough moving forward. So I think that I wanted to tell you that. I'll get all the information for you, but I think having the conversation back and forth is also something different with Black farmers. Like I found that out by just talking to somebody about something about the marine extension. They was like, oh, hey, bro, come over here and let me talk to you real quick. Did you know this was happening? Did you know Mr. Johnson about running a veal operation instead of just like letting go of his cow? So like veal is about to come out of the Southeast Georgia. So I think that there's a lot of those kinds of conversations that consistently happen.
It's those types of connections that you end up making. We have to beat the streets as chefs and really kind of make those connections. And that's answering someone's question. We have to make an effort, right? As chefs and as restaurant owners, we have to make an effort to find farmers that we want to work with, and we want to have their product and we want to showcase their product. Matthew, a question came through and I'm just going to quote it. So, and I find it really interesting that, you know, we need a chance to talk about this. It says, I wonder if Matthew could talk about coming back to the land and the process of preparing educationally and culturally. What has changed over the years with reference to his original theories around farming practice and the reality or running the farm? So what you come back thinking you were gonna do, and what you end up doing?
So here's one of the very first things I did when I got home. I said I wanted to have hogs on the farm, and so I got Pinky and Porky, male and female. A hog is 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, and a litter is gonna come. I went from 2 hogs to 50 hogs in a year. I wasn't prepared for 50 hogs. I mean, I really wasn't prepared for 50 hogs. So much so that I was at a bar one day, sitting there, knocking back some tequila and some beer. And I happened to be talking to the guy that was behind the bar. And I was like, man, he was like, hey, Matthew, how's the farming thing going? I was like, man, I got these 50 hogs and I'm trying to figure out, do I take them up here to Wayne and get them processed? Or I just need something out, because they're, just regular land race hogs, but they're nice. They've been eating out in the woods and blah, 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 blah. And this guy sitting next to me goes, my friend, did you say you have hogs? And I said, yeah. He was like, how much? And I was like, what do you mean how much? He was like, me and my friend right here, we come out there and get a hog from you. And I was like, what? I sold each one of those hogs somewhere between $100 and $300 and never left my farm. And I realized that my thought process was originally, I need to package me some meat and I need to do da. And I made more money by having them come out, drop the hog, dress it out, and take it with them than I would have if I were, because I had to pay for it to be cut and all that other kind of stuff. So one of the main things I learned in that first year was that I need to quit thinking as though I need to be in a farmer's market. I need to think about, how do I get monies into this farm? And so I went into this thing of, I need to take care of my animals, I need to take care of the land, and how do I do all of that and still make money? So I started doing more things on the farm, kind of like Booker T. Watley's thought process of, you can make $100,000 off of your farm with less than 25 acres if you do everything from the farm, right? And so I didn't quite fold all that process originally, and I was like, oh, I got to get to the farmer's market. So I was driving to Savannah, but that's 65 miles away, one way. You see what I'm saying? So I had to rethink that. I think that was my first approach. And then I would say my second approach to date is now finding what resonates with Matthew when he plants it, So hibiscus resonates with me for sure. It's a perennial plant. I get it here, it keeps coming back. So I'm really starting to think about those kinds of things in there. And then there was a question that I saw came up, and I'd like to address it if I could.
Yeah.
So the conversation, I think the question was, how does LGBTQ fall in with what we are thinking about and what our families are thinking about? My family is very accepting of everybody. It's always been that way. It's never going to change. My daughter, it has been out since she was 14 years old. Nobody changed their thought process, because if nothing else, we family first. And so, and that's within my family. I can't talk about everybody else, but I can talk to you about my family. My family is very inclusive. And one of the main reasons that we've always been inclusive is because we know that when the wind starts to blow, we're not in control of where it blows or how it blows. And we can't control nature. And so whatever comes up within our family, whatever preferences they happen to have, as long as they can go outside and drop some peas in the ground, they ain't got no damn problem. As long as they can go over there and take care of them hogs, I ain't got no problem.
Right.
It's when they decide that they can't do those things that I didn't have a problem. But I have no problem with who and what they decide to do. I have a problem with laziness. See what I'm saying? So yeah, I just wanted to answer that.
No, that's good. Thank you. Mashama, my next question that comes in says, what's the best method to seek out Black farmers, diverse or small producers for a restaurant? How do you think we can develop a better way to communicate with them? And this is a question I get all this time. Like, can you find me a Black farmer? Can you find me, a Black beekeeper? What, do you have any, steps or you feel that people should do to be able to get a Black farmer to their restaurant?
Yeah, I think you talk to Black farmers and Black farmers know other Black farmers, and you start to, kind of, insert yourself into the community, like reaching out to Matthew. Matthew was one of the first people that I met when I was looking for purveyors. And he was introduced to me by the late Cynthia Hayes, who started a network for African-American farmers in the Southeast. And so just kind of like seeking out those kind of, like Matthew said earlier, the shrimp co-op, those things have, go on social media, Google, search, talk, go to the farmer's market and start talking to people. I think those are the best ways. Go to your favorite restaurant or go to a restaurant that who uses local farmers. Have a conversation with them, have them connect you with that. Because 9 times out of 10, somebody can direct you to someone, someone of color and someone who is diverse. Nine times out of 10, you will find those people. So I think, just kind of getting in the door, however that may be, like Georgia Organics, they have this statewide kind of connection loop where you can get on the phone and talk to somebody, or you can go on the website and start researching different local farms. You can start there and just start cold calling people. That's a lot of what I did in the very beginning. Just started calling people and asking them if they deliver to Savannah, asking them if they want to work with restaurants, asking those questions. And then, then they'll slowly start coming.
I think it's the same way as we're doing purveyors, right? We cold call, figure out what they're doing. It's a little easier because they're a little bit more organized, because it's, what the system of getting the purveyors are for. But, I can even stop at, finding Black farmers. I ask white farmers too.
Yeah.
Do you know Black farmers?
Yeah.
Yes or no. And then you can move on from there.
Yeah.
The next question that I got is from Matthew. Matthew, someone asked how is climate change, has it altered your crops, your expectations, and what will you do from 5 to 10 years from now?
Let's see. So far as climate change goes, Mother Nature is going to do whatever she wants to do. I think that all we can do is try to do the right thing for the land and do the right thing for the environment. And I think that that's, climate change is going to affect me. Yeah. I mean, Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Irma, I lost 125 chickens and ducks. I lost all of the plastic that was on my largest high tunnel. Matter of fact, we drove 2 hours in all kind of different directions and never found that piece of plastic. Like, wow. on a 30 wide, 72 foot long, like that should be somewhere, right? It should have fallen somewhere at some point. That junk might be in Alabama for all I know. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we want to talk about climate change and how things happen. Yeah, only thing we can do is get ready to pivot. So I did it the same way I do in the kitchen, right? Just like, okay, I don't have the ducks, I don't have the chickens. What we gonna do? Okay, well, I just got to get some more, raise them up, and keep it moving. Now, I think one of the things that we have to think about is, like, if we don't start taking care of the earth, there won't be Mashama's restaurant. There won't be Matthew taking care of anything, because we are actually destroying it in that process. I see myself 5 to 10 years from now. You know, 5 to 10 years from now, all of my children will have graduated from college. And I know that the same way I got this land is the same way they're going to get this land. It's going to get passed down to them. We're really looking at putting things into a land trust, which is just that's what we're deciding to do because we have so much of it. And I think it's very important for me to ensure that I take the next 5 to 10 years to cultivate my children to understand how important the land is and what kind of power it gives.
And that's like representing the legacy, right? So you're looking at the future and to be sustainable and to keeping it farmland, which is ideal, what we should be thinking about right now at this point, beyond if you just started a new farm or it's passed down by generations. My next question, I believe, is to both of you. Mashama and Matthew both have culinary lives away from Georgia. And I was wondering if y'all could talk about what brought y'all back, what you brought back with you to Georgia and how they developed their new culinary vocabulary in such unique territory.
You go first, Mashama.
Great.
Ladies first, Mashama.
I'm like, I think so. I can talk about, I went to a culinary school, a French culinary school, French-based culinary school. And that was one of the first times I kind of started to really learn about old school, old world cooking techniques and that kind of thing. And and that was kind of like the basis of my education. And I sought out restaurants that were focused on that. Seafood restaurants, fine dining restaurants. I sort of sought those places out because if I was going to cook, I wanted to cook at a high level. I wanted to do it in a way that was there was this self-gratification that I was searching for. And also there was this kind of idea of travel and experiences that I was kind of seeking through food. So that led me to France. And when I went to France, I lived in a chateau on a farm for the first time in my life. And I lived there for about 5 months, and they had everything. They had, an orchard, they had lettuces and all types of vegetables, potatoes and everything. And it was a little dilapidated, and it was kind of like at the end of its era, coming toward the end of its era. But one of the things that I really connected me to French food, the farm, and it became this kind of full circle of Southern food and Southern cooking. And so when I came back from France, I knew that I wanted to cook in the South. But before I could cook in the South, I needed to find the motivation to do that, because French food wasn't necessarily motivating me to cook in the South, and Italian cooking wasn't necessarily motivating me to do that. So I think the thing that I brought down with me from New York was this internal optimism that I was going to find inspiration in the traditions that my parents and grandparents have instilled in me. And that was going to connect me to my ancestry, which was going to connect me to the land, which in turn connects me to the food. So I needed to do all of that before I could even talk about and I didn't know that this was the process that I was going through until I had come through on the other side of it and realized that it didn't matter where I was in the world. It didn't matter who was influencing me, because the greatest influence I had was from my family and the food that they fed me. So how can I cook that food that can resonate with me in the same way by using these techniques that I had sought out throughout my career? And that's sort of my philosophy and how I approach food and think about the menu and pay homage to my ancestors.
And that, you know, that I can completely relate to and resonate with, especially when it comes to telling your story in your food, not just your story of today, but just your past and your family's past and generations of work and wealth and that has come up to be on a plate, which is amazing. Thank you, Mashama. Matthew, you can't get away from this question.
Okay. So for me, what's really funny is, so I'm a child of the 70s. So when I graduated from high school, I wanted to go to culinary school. I was just like, I want to go to culinary school. My dad was like, there's a lot of things you can be, cooking ain't one of them. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, what else can I do? It was good enough for you because my father's a baker by trade from the late 50s and 60s. So I grew up eating French pastries as a kid that my dad made at the house, like along with biscuits. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of grew up with this really different and very eclectic way of living because my father was from Bridgeport, Connecticut. And so I went to go see his parents, my grandparents in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And then I went to my mom's father who lived down, my grandfather who lived in Miami. So my summers of growing up, I was either in Bridgeport, Connecticut, Queens, New York, or Miami. And then I came back to Brunswick, Georgia to go to school and work on the farm pretty much. That was kind of like what happened. And when I had that conversation with people, like I didn't really realize until I was damn near an adult that people bought everything from the grocery store. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I had learned how to cook with my dad, my mom, my aunt, my grandmother. I had learned like all these ways of cooking, so much so that by the time I went to culinary school, after I got out of the military, I remember falling asleep in class, like just like listening to them and just kind of like zoning, you know? And I heard, Mr. Rayford. And I was like, yes, chef. What am I talking about? And I said, oh, you're talking about macaroni and cheese sauce. And he said, what? And I said, you're talking about macaroni and cheese sauce. Well, that's what it really is the sauce that goes in macaroni and cheese. And he goes, no, I'm not. I'm talking about a bechamel, which is now a Mornay. And I was like, no, you're talking about macaroni and cheese sauce. Because in my head, I had equated what he was talking about to what my grandmother and them did. I was like, okay, they put the cream in, they put the stuff in there, the seasoning, okay, and then they let it get thick, and then they do that, and then they add the cheese. That macaroni and cheese sauce. That's all I knew, right? And so I started having this conversation about, which is like totally hilarious. He came to me and said, hey, show me this macaroni and cheese sauce. And so my chef was asking me about macaroni and cheese sauce. And so I was right there in class. I started making it. And he said, so where'd you learn that from? He said, because this is the exact same technique. And I said, well, you know, I made the roux, I did all the stuff. And I said, well, that's the way we cook down south. And he was like, oh. Now I remember in the 90s when Southern cooking wasn't cool. Now it's like the bee's knees. Like everybody wants to tout that they got the best Southern restaurant, blah, 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 blah. Everybody's trying to get back to their roots. We were already at our roots from the very, very beginning, right? And we were trying to use the thing to move up in the ranks. That's what we were. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like a lot of the stuff what I brought back home, literally, was the thought process that we are a hell of a lot more alike than we are different. Like everybody wants comfort food. Everybody. People want comfort food. And that's why Southern, think about this. We are running on almost a decade of Southern food being some hot-ish. Nobody can talk about a food trend that has lasted 10 years nonstop, that every city is just like, I'm gonna have that in my city. So that I brought back, hey, we are so much alike, and we all like good food. And so we should all just keep pushing on that good food. And if farmers are part of that conversation, Oh, hell yeah, that's even better.
Yep.
You know? So yeah, I mean, there's almost 130 people on this thing, and everybody's thinking about food and thinking about, like, I grew up eating. It's funny, somebody said marrow right here. I grew up eating marrow. I grew up eating bone marrow. So when I saw it in school, and I was like, y'all pay how much for this?
Right.
You know, I like oxtails. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all pay how much for this? You're like, yeah. So yeah,
you're right. We are very similar in the way that we eat and the way that we cook our food. Mashama, all right. This is going to be the last question for the night. We have a lot of questions coming in, but sadly we cannot get through them all. But this question is for Mashama. It says, in the first issue of For the Culture, you mentioned that you would like to see a larger margins BT profit and loss in the restaurant industry. How do you envision this being achieved with local farmers and partners? And in the same vein, could you can you take, or I guess it's supposed to be talk about the work that you've done with the gray to compensate people fairly?
Yeah, I think so for working with farmers and also trying to supplement the profit and loss, I think go hand in hand. It's a lot about what Matthew was saying earlier about using everything and not wasting a lot of things. And time plays into profit and loss. Waste plays into that. And I think the more curated your menu is, the less you have, the less waste you have. The more labor you have, but the less waste you have. So for me, I think, thinking about it long term, I think curating the menu, making it smaller, making it more diverse, meaning that you kind of move through the seasons as the seasons grow. So you have a young spring part, then you have a middle sort of like older, more mature, more sun on the vegetable part. Then you have something that's dried that you can kind of rehydrate with whatever stock, whatever. And I think if you look at the food like that, and you look at your profit margin like that, you start to recoup some of those things that go out of the window when it comes to big box stores, and you start packaging because you're paying a bigger price for a smaller yield. And I think when you start to bring those things in yourself and do it more in house, you can use it all. You can use the shells, you can use everything. So I envision that as being part of what solves the problem, because I also look at profit and loss as like who you are paying, who you are paying to supply you the food. So for me, the more farmers and Black farmers we lose, that's a loss, right? But for the restaurant, you can negotiate ways that you both can kind of stay in business and make each other a profit. So I think working with small local people probably are the best ways that you can increase profit and decrease loss, because you can do trades, like our pig farmer, if we don't use the collar stems, we give him the collar stems, he can knock something back for us. So like you end up kind of like working with each other. And I think that goes back to the whole community aspect of growing food and eating food.
Most definitely.
So I think the only way we can start to really decrease or really kind of change those profit margins is staying within smaller communities and working within a smaller community. That's my vision, and that's sort of my first take on how to do that, and then I think a lot. So I knew when we opened the Gray that I wanted to give health insurance. I wanted to have a 401k after 90 days. Everyone's eligible, dental, vision, all that stuff, because this is a career for me. And I think one of the things that you need to offer adults as they are pursuing their career are benefits, So as they have a family, they need to have these things accessible to them. So that was really important for me because I wanted career people. I wanted people who took this seriously and wanted to work in food for the long term. And so those are some of the examples of how we support our staff. And we look at the market and we try to be as competitive as possible with, salaries and things like that. We pay our cooks, almost what they get paid in New York City, or almost what they will be paid in Seattle. So that's not easy to do. And we buy, we sell a lot of wine, and selling wine and being able to do that in your restaurant, selling alcohol and stuff like that, those can help pay for your hourly employees, help with fair wage with that. So we're lucky enough to be able to serve beer, wine, and alcohol, and we use that money to help pay for hourly fair hourly wages. So I hope that answers the question. I mean,
well, you answered it. You hit it. You hit it.
All right, it looks like we are wrapping up because I'm starting to see the eyes on us, letting us know that we are done for the evening. But I know this won't be the last time that we will see each other and start having these conversations. And I will be down in your areas shortly, soon, to try to eat and conversate, and definitely coming out to visit your farm, Matthew.
Yeah, come on. And I need to come up there and plant some seeds with you at 40.
Whew, Lord, wait till the weather changes, babe.
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and looking forward to the next MOFAD, which is Thursday, right?
It is. It's our final event of the month. Thank you, Adrienne, for doing my job beautifully there. After doing your job so masterfully, which I could absolutely never do. So thank you so much for leading this incredible conversation. Mashama, Matthew, thank you so much. This was absolutely beautiful. I learned so much. Our final event of the month is on Thursday. It's free. It's a storytelling event. We're going to hear from some of the people in the chat. Therese Nelson, I know she's on there. We're going to hear about food activism and some of the folks who inspired food activists that are working today, and talk about some ancestors as well. So I hope to see you there. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you for your wonderful questions and kind words in the chat, and sending lots of love to all of you in Texas and in the South. I hope you're staying safe and warm, and everyone, please keep wearing your masks, and we'll see you soon. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.
Good seeing you all.
Good seeing you soon.